welcome to another version of Sea Stories. It's great to have you here. I'm Duncan Hood, I'm your host, and on behalf of the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race and the American Schooners Association, I'd like to welcome you. We've got a really interesting guest tonight, a guy who does something that I have never done. He has gone faster than you can possibly imagine for those of us who are saltwater sailors. And I'd like you all to meet my friend Andy Gratton. Andy, how are you?
I'm just fine. Thank you, Duncan.
Yeah, great to have you. You're joining us all the way from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Am I right?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Good to see.
Oshkosh B'gosh, a home of EAA, as most people know it.
That's right. It's the Bagash place.
Yeah.
Love that. Before we get too far in, everybody, I'd like to once again do a test of our chat. During Andy's presentation, you'll have the ability to chat amongst yourselves and us, and also you'll have a chance to put your questions in the Q&A if you will want to do that. So for those of you who've pulled up your screens, at the bottom of your screens, you'll see a little chat button, and in Perfect Land, you'll see a little Q&A as well. And we found today that the Q&A may be hidden in the More button. Anyway, let's try out over in your chat button. If you all would type in where you're joining us from, I'll type here. And let's see if we see everybody. Oh, that's nice. Bill Milet, Dan McLaughlin. Hey, you guys. Oh, nice. It's
Good
happening
for
so
us.
fast. Fargo, North Dakota. My goodness.
Running good. Blaze.
Extremely cool.
Somebody from Frontline. Very cool.
Look at that.
Tom
So you all
Clausen.
should be able to see your chats rolling along, and we'll do the same. Like I say, you can use this, and as hello, Valdez, Alaska. Very cool. Um, as you see your chats go on, if you have any questions, you can type them there, and I'll keep an eye on it. And of course, we'll do the same at the Q&A. Well, having said that, hello, Andy. You're going to talk to us about ice boats now, aren't you?
Sure, I will.
I'll look
Shall I?
forward to it. You know, I've got a good friend of mine, Jack Sarah, who sailed with you a few years ago, and he came home and frankly would not stop talking about it, especially the fact that you guys went above 60 miles an hour. And the fastest I've ever been in a sailboat might be 12. So we're looking forward
Well,
to it very much. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into this and what drives you to keep doing it?
I love doing it. If I could ice boat all year, I would. But I haven't found a place to do that. Uh, how did I get into it?
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, my mother told me about ice boats, and I should go down to the yacht club in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and see what they look like and go for a ride. And I had no idea what these things look like. I just couldn't imagine how do you put a sailing boat on ice and make it go. And anyway, I went down there and found a friend's father had one, and he put me in the boat and told me, "This is how you steer. This is the sheet. See ya." He shoved me out.
That's the way the Vikings do swimming.
Kind of, yeah. He shoved me out. He'll figure it out. And in about 500 feet, I had it hiking up in the air. Like, oh, that's kind of scary, but it sure was a lot of fun. So that's how I started.
That's nice. Was there anybody who really was an inspiration to you and really showed you the ropes, or you just lammed onto it?
I just grabbed on and I went down there as often as I could down to the lake and
Mm.
the club in Fond du Lac had an old stern steer that sometimes I could get a ride on with one of the other guys, and I just kind of learned from there, and
Oh,
we had a
pretty
good time with
fun.
it.
Pretty fun. And then I remember talking to you a little bit about your career. You were an engineer who got paid to break things and write reports about that. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
That must that must fit right in with ice boating.
Yeah, I break stuff there too. That's
Oh,
right.
it's great fun. All right, my friend. Well, let's get into your slide deck and let's take a look and see what you got. I want to hear all about it.
Okay. Whoops. We gotta get back to the beginning here.
Good place to start.
We were practicing everybody beforehand. There we go. Uh,
All right, let's do it.
from the beginning. Okay, you should have a full screen there. Ice boating overview. This
Whoops.
is
Hang on just a
myself. You
sec.
already know
There we go.
that.
We're ready. Go.
And oh, okay. And here's where I live. You got the northeast corner of the United States, and the red circle is Lake Winnebago. Fond du Lac, where I just mentioned, is down where I grew up, is at the south end of the lake, and Oshkosh, Wisconsin's about halfway up the lake. And here's the red circle where Oshkosh is. This is a, a satellite view of the lake during the wintertime when it's got a nice sheet of ice on it without any snow or snow. And this just gets me excited looking at it. You can you can see a lot of the features of the lakes, the cracks in it, and ridges and whatnot. But anyway, this is where we do our sailing. It's 28 miles long and 10 miles wide. It's a nice sized lake. I like it. Um, so here's one of the boats I sail. That's me standing there. Um, you might not notice, but I really am hanging on. Not by much, but I am. So okay. I will give you a brief history tonight. Talk a little bit about what it might be like to sail an ice boat. I'll try to describe it, which will be a little tricky. The types of ice boat designs, a little bit about racing ice boats and the trophies, and a little bit about cruising ice boats on this lake, and then we'll get into the questions. So, the history of ice boating. Ice boating started back as best anybody can figure out in the 1600s over in the Netherlands. And they took boats, the boats that they used to use running up and down the canals for delivering goods because they held freight in the boats. There weren't roads. Um, and they were probably much larger than these boats pictured. These are modern boats. But they put a stout plank underneath the hull with a skate at each end of it, much like what you see here. And then underneath the rudder, they put a little skate, and then they could run these boats up and down the ice and on the canals. Um, so then in the around 1800, plus or minus 10 years or so, uh, ice boat sailing came over to the U.S. and landed on the Hudson River. And the first ice boats were kind of a boxy boat, boxy hull, kind of like a punt or a john boat, with a rudder at the back and a skate on it, and two rudders on the front two skates on the front two corners of the boat, and maybe it had a gaff rig or a lateen rig. We're not sure what the rig was on it, but that's what they sailed for a number of years. And it was kind of a boxy affair, probably not very large. I don't know many details about it, but eventually the uh, the boats grew in size and they became more of what's shown on the screen here, where it's a basic frame, a very simple frame, a backbone, a crosswise plank, we call the plank, and the steering at the stern, um, a skate or runner on each corner of the boat. And generally it was a gaff rig back then, and they had very long and squatty rigs,
Hey,
long
Andy,
booms.
if you'd like to point with your mouse, that'll show up for everyone. So if you want to
Okay.
point, yep, there you
Okay.
go.
And then back here where the steering runner is, there's a basket or cockpit, which is really a little platform with some cushions in it that the operators would sit on, usually the helmsman and somebody tending the sheet or sheets. Um, I'll go back to that. At the time of these boats, they would be able to race the trains up and down the Hudson Valley, and the trains, I don't know if they go 40 or 50 miles an hour, I'm not sure, but the ice boats would regularly beat the trains if they had a decent wind. So at the time, ice boats were the fastest vehicle on Earth, fastest means of transportation, until the advent of the airplane, and the airplanes got up to speeds over the ice boat speeds. Um, this boat here, this is there's the Avalanche, the Gypsy, and the Icicle. The Icicle was owned by John Roosevelt, FDR's uncle, and he was very much into ice boating and helping that sport a lot. Eventually boat, the ice boating sport got over to the Midwest. We have some documentation of it being in Madison papers in 1854. And this picture here is of Mackinac Island and Lake Huron. In the background, you can see the Grand Hotel. And these boats, to me, with the mast position right above the plank and the way they're designed, I would say they're from probably the 1870s. Just guessing at that, but I can't imagine sailing these things with sometimes two sheets is one too many, and this one's got four sheets on it. Maybe you don't have to tend the sheet very often on the topsail, but it still looks like a lot of work for somebody. A lot of fun though. So in the 1930s, somebody figured out that if you put the steering runner at the bow, call it a bow steer, uh, the boat will handle very, very well, and you can have a small boat, and they actually became quicker than the big stern steers. In the past, well, the larger the boat, the faster it was the general rule of thumb. Of course, they were all using cotton sails and not full length battens and low squatty gaff rigs um, most of the time. But these small boats were agile and quick. And you can see one on the left here is one of the earlier ones. We call it the batwing design for the obvious reason of the sail with the batten up there. And then the one on the right is a two-seater. I suspect it's from 1938 with that sail number, and it's a Palmer, which was made down in Lake Geneva. And it steers at the bow too. And this guy's probably got a steering wheel in the boat to steer it with. Um, so those boats, people like them because they were smaller. They didn't cost as much. They're easier to handle. The rigs were simpler. They're not so complicated with lots of wires and whatnot. So they became very, very popular. They could fit in your garage where you could store them then. And over the years, those boats developed. And the pictures you see here are a couple boats down in Madison. And this is the latest, greatest bow steering boats out there, the fastest ones we've got. And uh, it's been a long, interesting development over the years. If you look back at the history of it, it's kind of neat. So sailing an ice boat. This will be a little difficult, I think, for me to describe how to do it. But first, the boat will be parked. It'll be parked like these guys here, and you got to get it going. So you turn it off the wind a little ways, maybe on a reach, and then you have to start pushing on it. And once it gets up to speed a little bit, you jump in, and you got to steer it while you're doing that. Um, so if you just leave the sail out, and it's easier to imagine maybe one of these boats. If you leave the sail out a ways, um, it'll take off and it'll get up to certain speed, and then the sail won't develop much power anymore because the apparent wind shifts forward, and it might actually start to luff a little bit. So then you can sheet it in, and you can go a little faster. You develop a little more power, and you can go a little bit faster. And then your apparent wind shifts forward more and becomes greater in magnitude. Then you can sheet it in some more, and you'll accelerate and go faster again. And it kind of goes in a circle like that until drag stops you from accelerating any faster. Yeah, and your apparent wind at that time might be about 30 degrees or so off the bow of the boat. Steering response, whether you're in a stern steer or a bow steering boat, is really pretty precise because you got sharp runners. They come down to roughly a 90-degree angle. Most boats have a 90 degree, so it's a sharp edge. Not like an ice skate; those are flat. But if you put an ice skate up on edge, tilt it over, that corner it runs on is kind of like what an ice boat runner is. And they're sharp. So when you turn the steering runner, uh, the boat turns. It's quite responsive. And if you turn it really hard, you're going fast, and you turn it hard and sharp to make a sharp turn, you might slide the back end of the boat out, like sliding the back end of a car out. Or it might have a little bit of understeer characteristics where the steering runner's turn, but it's just sliding and trying to turn a little bit, kind of like a car can do too in an understeer condition. But generally, if you don't, if you unlike a car driving around on the ice, you have very little control of your steering. If you turn too sharp, you'll just spin it out. But the ice boats are pretty precise in their steering response. So once you get your sail going, pulled in, and you get going a decent speed, a little puff of wind might come along, and then the runner starts going up in the air. And in soft water sailing, you call that heeling. And in hard water sailing, we call it hiking. So you hike a runner up in the air, and sometimes they go all the way up in the air and capsize the boat, which with a stern steer is not really a problem. I've done that many times, but in a bow steer, that's not a good thing to do. You can get slam dunked, um, and you don't want to be there. So then you can let the sheet out to put the runner back down, or you can turn upwind if you're going on the upwind, more or less an upwind course. You can turn upwind, or if you're going downwind, you turn further downwind. Um, and then there's peeling off where you're going up, say you're racing around a course, upwind, downwind course, and you get to the windward mark and you got to go from upwind to downwind. And as you go across the wind through that reaching position, that's where you'll start accelerating a lot and get pushed back in the boat, and that's really quite exciting, especially if you're doing that while you're hiking, because then the boat kind of banks around the corner, almost like an airplane banking around a pylon. It's pretty neat to watch, especially those A skeeters, the big ones that we saw the picture of. Now going downwind, you could go straight downwind, but you'll only go as fast as the wind. If you got a 15-mile-an-hour wind, you got a little bit of friction on the ice and the runners, and you'll be going 13 or 14 miles an hour downwind. But you won't go faster than that. So if you want to go fast downwind, you have to go off on a broad reach. And your apparent wind then will be coming way around almost on a beam reach from the true wind. It'll be almost 90 degrees off the true wind. And you'll be going downwind very quickly. And that's a lot of fun. And then when you need to switch courses, switch tacks, you'll jibe over. And it's not a big deal at all. You might be going 50, 60 miles an hour, and you just start making a turn, a nice and gradual turn. And at one point, you're going dead downwind, but you'll actually feel apparent wind will be coming at your face. The sail's luffing. And and as you turn over to the new tack, the mast tips over because it slops back and forth a little bit. And the boom switches sides and it starts to fill with wind and you power it up and off you go again. So it's really a pretty neat feeling. Um, and then slowing and stopping, if you can slow down by going straight downwind, and have your sail pulled in really tight and go straight downwind, and eventually you'll be going slower than the actual true wind. But then you have to, at some point, turn the boat upwind. And when you do that, you'll accelerate. But you can certainly stop by turning upwind and letting your sail out. There are no brakes on ice boats. Some of the boats have parking brakes. Well, they all have a parking brake, and some of them actually have a drag type brake that scratches the ice with a lever. But it only works in low speed situations when you're coming in to park the boat. Um, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea what it might be like to sail on a boat.
What on earth is
Okay.
what does a parking brake look like on an ice boat?
It's a device that lifts the runner up an inch, and it has some sharp spikes that stick
I
down into the ice.
like a
So on this boat here, you lift the runner up and you slide a little like an H. It looks like an H that fits around on both sides of the runner. And there's two little points that stick down into the ice and jams up this runner so it can't slide forward. So that's the parking brake. That's how we keep them from getting away on us. Uh, we lock it into the ice basically. So the skeeters here, these A skeeters, they're the most efficient boats because they have very little drag. As you can see, they're very sleek. They have a very high aspect ratio for the sail, much like high aspect ratio wings on a sailplane. And this friend of mine that actually sails this boat, he said in earlier this year in a race, he was going upwind about 40 miles an hour, downwind about 50, and the true wind was 5 to 7 mile per hour. And if he has a true wind of 15 to 20, you'll end up with these numbers upwind and downwind. So the ratio of multiplication of your speeds, you might have You might have 10 to 1 here in the very light wind, but that doesn't carry true for the stronger. The stronger the wind gets, the lower that ratio is. Um, so there is times that he may have exceeded 100 miles an hour in this boat, but they're very rare. It's kind of like your car. You know, most cars can go over 100 miles an hour, but most people don't do that for one. And if you do it, it's not going to be for real long, and you got to have all the right conditions. Um, so you got to have good ice, smooth ice, enough space, a steady wind that might be strong. Because if it's not a steady wind, you can't. You it's hard to control the boat when the gusts come along, and you can't see the gusts. Unlike on soft water, it's difficult to see the wind on the ice.
And
Um,
Andy, how do you know how fast you're going? Do you use GPS on your
yeah,
wristwatch or something like that?
yeah. The boats used to go a whole lot faster until GPS came out. Yeah, because people were estimating all the time, oh, I'm going 100 some miles an hour. No, they're not, or I'm going 60 miles an hour. And then you put actually, when we first started doing it, it was with a radar gun, an old radar gun, and we kept getting 435 or 40 miles an hour on some particular boats. And that can't be right. That's got to be wrong. But no,
I love it.
that's
It's
how
like
we
the
measure
fish
the
that got
speed.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, they're right, right. But the GPS that works well, and most of the guys have GPS in their boats. Um, Most ice boats don't sail as fast as the skeeters. They're not quite as efficient. And they sail upwind roughly 40 miles an hour and downwind roughly 60 in a 15-mile-an-hour breeze. So that's a typical boat. Uh, some of the older boats can't even do that much speed unless they have just the right conditions. Okay, Duncan, here's your first commercial break.
This is a pitch to ask you to join us at the American Schooner Association. Founded in 1972, the American Schooner Association is dedicated to the history, preservation, and promotion of the schooner rig. You don't need to be a schooner owner to join the organization, just to be interested in these beautiful boats. As time marches forward, the role that schooners played in the history of our country is fading too. Your membership helps support educational programs and provides a base for preserving these vessels. So, join us. It's inexpensive, important, and we'd love to have you along. We'll see you at amschooner.net.
Okay, we've got two designs basically, uh, depending on the steering. That's how we'll first categorize these. We have the stern steer on the left here, and the steering runner is at the stern, of course, like a regular sailboat. And it's steered by a tiller. Sometimes the tiller, if there's like the old boats that I showed you the painting of, it had a basket back there, and there is actually a tiller sticking over the basket. Yeah, and this one, the tiller, the helmsman and operator sits up in the forward cockpit. There's two cockpits here, and he's got a tiller that's right now turned off to the side, and it's connected to the steering runner with some chains and cables underneath. And then we have over here a bow steer, which obviously has the steering runner at the bow, and he's got some cable arrangement going into the cockpit. And most of the boats you steer with your feet when you're sitting in a cockpit like this, a fuselage, you steer with your feet, but when you're outside the boat, starting the boat or stopping the boat, and you don't have your feet down in there because you're out of the cockpit, you need to have another method of steering. So there'll usually be a small steering wheel underneath the deck that you can reach in with your hand to do the steering until you're actually down in the cockpit and can get your feet on the pedals. So that's how they steer. And most of the boats, you're pretty much laying down in the boat or in a semi-reclined position like the one shown here. Uh, Here we go. So the bow steers, I'll cover those first. And there's three classes. We call these skeeters because one of the first bow steers was called the bow skeeter, Beau. And the skeeter name stuck. And this is a Class A Skeeter. They're the biggest. They're about 30 feet long, 25 feet wide. They have a mast height limit of 28 feet and a sail area limit of 75 square feet. That's just the cloth, not counting the boom and the mast. Um, and those have had various designs over the years. This is the latest, greatest with the bubble boat. At one point in the 80s and 90s, they had a seat in the back, very back end of the boat, and we called those rumble seaters because you're sitting way at the back of the boat, and all the rumbling came out right past you from the runners. And some of the earlier boats, like the one we were just looking at, the yellow boat, you sit underneath the boom. Um, but these certainly are the most efficient boats. And then there's the B Skeeter, which is generally these older boats from the 60s, 70s. They're two-seater boats. Every B Skeeter is a two-seater boat. There's these uh, these boats here in Wisconsin, and then there's some Yankees out east that are two-seat boats. And actually, a Knight is a two-seater boat that could be a B Skeeter. And then there's the Class C Skeeter. And these could be a bubble boat like the one shown, or they might be one that you sit under the boom on, or even I've seen a small rumble seater like that. But they have a 20-foot, 3-inch mast height limit. You can still have 75 square feet of sail on all these boats, but there's a mast height limit on the Class C, so that prevents it from getting really big, like the Class A boats. And then we have the smaller boats. The Detroit News is a very popular boat worldwide. There's thousands of them out there. Detroit News newspaper sponsored a design competition in 1937 to come up with a small ice boat that's easily car toppable, small one person boat. And this is the original design that came out of it, or nearly the original. And it's got a wooden mast, wooden boom, tiller steering here, connected with some cables underneath to the steering runner up forward. It's 8 feet wide, 16-foot mast. I think the boat's 12 feet long or thereabout. And over the years, uh, it's sort of a one design, but sort of a development class. Anyway, we'll say that they evolved over the years into what you see on the right here. And yes, that is normal for that mast to bend like that. Those are really fast masts. The one in the back, you must not be sheeting quite hard enough, and maybe he's not into a puff yet that the number 111 has. But you can see how very bendy the rigs are, and the plank on these old boats, the plank wouldn't bend like that. But that makes them very fast and responsive. And these boats can hit over 60 miles an hour too, without much trouble. So that's very popular race boat. Then there's some one design boats, pretty strict one design boats. One model is the Renegade shown here. It's 23 feet long, so it fits in your garage. It's 16 feet wide and 18 feet tall. And it's a one-person boat, pretty tight boat, and a hull, and it's got foot pedal steering, and you sit underneath the boom for that one. And that too, it's got some check stays or diamond wires on the mast so that it bends, not as much as the DN mast that you saw, but the masts are bendy and the planks are bendy. You want to size them to your weight so that they're flexible and can absorb some of the energy in the puffs, and then slowly release it out slower so that you can speed up fast. Then there's these mini skeeters, a relatively recent design by a fellow out west, and they're about 10 feet long and 8 feet wide, and they have a freestanding mast on it that has a rig kind of like a windsurfer rig, and they've been clocked at over 70 miles an hour. Generally, they don't go that fast. It's kind of like your car again. Once in a while, you can go that fast, but generally they go in the 40 to 60 range. Uh, but they're very strict one designs, and so are these boats called the Knights. These were developed in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, and mostly for night sailing. Guys were going from around to the various bars around the lake down there, and they called it the Knight that way. But it's a good one design boat to race. It's 16 feet long, 10-foot runner plank, a wooden 16-foot mast. The fuselage is fiberglass on these, and they're a two-seater boat, but they're raced. I think everybody always races them with one person in the boat. And they're pretty strict on the wind design. It's a nice boat. It's not very large, so it's easy to transport and store. And then there's the really small boats. Here's a boat that's got a regular windsurfing rig on it that's got some short stay wires holding the boom up and some kind of a sheeting arrangement. There's various styles of boats I've seen that use windsurf rigs. This one, the guy sits in the front. Here, there's a skimmer ice boat that's been around for a number of years, decades. It's a 45 square foot sail. The boat itself is made out of tubular pipe, the whole boat, and it comes apart and stores very easily. I even know somebody that bought one of these boats because she lives in an apartment and has no garage to store it in, so she can get this boat in her apartment. And then over here we have boats that use softwater sailing rigs, and the sunfish rig is a popular one to use. There used to be one here in Oshkosh, and the guy would sheet it in so tight it looked like that rig was going to be a pretzel. It would bend so much. It was very interesting to watch. But there's all kinds of little boats like that. I made a tiny little stern steer. It was 8 feet long with a windsurf rig on it. It'll actually be in one of the slides further on.
Oh, fun.
And then the stern steer class that steers at the stern. Originally we had 5 classes, A, B, C, D, and E. And now we're down to 4 because the bow steers took over the E class is really what happened. So we have these 4 classes, and these are the sail sizes. That's your total sail area, not counting any spars. And what's shown here is an A boat. So here's another A boat. This one is out east. It was built in 1892 actually. It's called the Jack Frost, and I think Archibald Rogers owned it. I believe that's the right name. It's about 50 feet long and has 750 square feet of sail. Next to it is that little tiny stern steer I mentioned. This happened to be when they visited us in Fond du Lac in 2013, and they set up at near a friend of mine's house, and we had a lot of ice boats come down there to go sailing when those fellows were here from out east. Here are some lateen rig boats. These are from Toronto, probably from around turn of the century. Toronto had a big fleet of boats, and it seems that all of them were lateen rigs. Some of them had A-frame masts, some of them had a single stick for a mast, like these 2 boats shown here. Those are old boats, but there are still some lateen rig boats around. This one here also is out east, sailing on the Hudson. It's called Vixen, built in 1885. And this also was sailed by John Roosevelt, FDR's uncle, and is currently being sailed. We like to talk about these old boats, who's going to be the next caretaker of it. Not that you're necessarily the owner, but the caretaker till you can't do it anymore. Who's going to take over? I see a question here. Do the Lawrences still own the Jack Frost? Yes, they do. Here is the Class A. Stern steer was built in Detroit in the 1930s, called Ferdinand the Bull. It's about 40 feet long, 24 wide, 38-foot mast, 350 square feet of sail. This was Buddy Melgus's boat. He and another fellow owned it for a long time, decades, and over the years upgraded it to the sails that you see there. It's a very fast boat. And you can see in this one, it's got cockpits. You can't see the cockpits so much as kind of like a half a teardrop shape on this side and half teardrop shape on the other side, with a cushion inside it that the guys lay down on to steer. And here's the tiller. The runners turn sideways. With a stern steer, we don't necessarily use parking brakes. We just turn the tiller sideways, and then the boat can't go forward and aft. So that's what you see sticking out there is the tiller. This is a Class B boat, and it's Snowbird 3. It was built in 1927. 32 long, 22 feet wide, has a 34-foot mast, 250 square feet of sail. As the Johnson Boat Works over in Minnesota actually built this boat. Not with the rig on it that you see here. It actually had something on it called a banana mast. But that rig was the old rig, and this modern rig was placed on it instead, and
Just
it's
to
a
call a
fast
little
boat.
attention to how much pressure must be on that sheet. You've got 6 blocks top and bottom there.
Oh yeah, this block, I did some calculations on this. It puts about 2,000 pounds of tension on the leech when you pull it in tight. I sailed on this boat as a crew, and I would pull that. It's a 16-to-1 block of tackle here, and I would pull that at times about 150 pounds on the sheet. I did some measuring on it. This here is a Class C boat. It's called Ace of Spades. It's 26 long, 19 feet wide with a 25-foot hollow fiberglass mast. And as you can see, the boats are getting a little bit smaller, shorter, narrower as we go down in the sail size. And then we get to the Class D boat here. And this one's 24 feet long, 16 wide of the 24-foot mast, and of course, smaller sail area. All these all these boats carry two people or have the potential of carrying two people. You can see this one's got the tiller steering in front of the helmsman, and on the bottom you can see the sprocket, chain and sprocket connecting to the steering runner. Yeah, and the cheater boom on it. A lot of boom area there. Okay, racing an ice boat. There are some old cups, very old trophies that are being raced for over the years, both out east and here in the Midwest. This last season, about 2 months ago, the Van Nostrand Ice Yacht Challenge Cup that's pictured here was made in 1889 by Tiffany's. And it was raced for by the Hudson River Ice Yacht Club and the North Shrewsbury Ice Boat and Yacht Club. It's been raced for 4 times in the last 135 years. I'm getting all this information off the internet, so you guys can find it too. But only 4 times in the last 135 years, and it's a they call it a grudge match. So I think the Hudson River Club started with the cup and they lost it right away, and the North Shrewsbury has had it ever since until this year, and the Hudson River Club won it back. So I think that's pretty interesting.
I
Uh,
guess the race is only being held so many times is because that they haven't frozen fully.
Various reasons, yes. Part of it's they're racing in Red Banks, New Jersey, where the Shrewsbury Ice Boat Club is, and it doesn't always freeze there. It's sufficiently thick to put the big boats on. Those boats weigh probably close to 4,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. So you need a good foot of ice to really feel confident in not having a problem. You can sail it on a little less, but you don't know how much less it is. And generally you have to be able to drive on with your trailer in a vehicle to unload the boat onto the ice and set it up. So you want some ice thickness for that. And there's other reasons for that being so long in the tooth for racing for it. Here we see another challenge pennant from out east. It's the Ice Yacht Challenge Pennant of America from 1881. I think that says it's covered up. The original pennant was getting in tough shape here and is out in the Hyde Park Museum. I think it's in FDR's library. I haven't ever been there, but it's on my bucket list to go see these things. And it was originally blue with red and white back here, and it was 30 feet long. And the pennant was in and out of competition over the years, and twice it was a number of years, like a couple decades between races, and uh, and the last time it came back out into circulation was in the 1950s, and they made a new pennant here, which is currently held by the Four Lakes Ice Yacht Club, and this is a picture of it on the bottom of the new pennant, which is starting to get kind of old too. Okay, in the Mid East or Midwest here, excuse me, we have the a couple of our own special cups here. This is the Hearst International Challenge Cup, presented in 1904 by William Randolph Hearst of the paper company or newspaper companies. Yeah, that's the same guy, and he made this fancy trophy or had it made, and it's been won a number of times and it's still raced for. It hasn't been raced for in I think 2004 might be the last time. And you can see this close up here. We've even got a gaff rig stern steer showing on it. So I don't know if that was original on the trophy or maybe somebody added it, but it's a neat trophy. And then we also have the F.A. Stewart International Ice Yacht Trophy. This was presented in 1903. F.A. Stewart had a patent on some drugs from Marshall, Michigan, uh, back in the early 1900s, and this is a close-up of that trophy. And those trophies are both raced for by the Class A boats, strictly Class A boats here in the Midwest. And then another trophy that was very old that is actually being raced for now. It was out of circulation for about 60 years maybe. The Evening Wisconsin Trophy was made in 1896, and then the overall winner of the Wisconsin Stern Steering Association uh, gets to take this trophy home. And it's been replated and repaired and fixed up, so it looks very nice. Here's a close-up picture of the gaff rigger ice boat on the top of the trophy. This is a cover
Absolutely.
over the cup. So it's a pretty neat thing. And we have another very old trophy here. We don't know what the deed is, and it hasn't been raised for since the 50s. The Bowen Burnell Trophy of 1878. I've seen a newspaper article where this was a highly polished teapot. It's actually an insulated teapot that allows you to pour while it's still on the stand. But we don't know what the stipulation is for racing for it. It kind of was stashed away in somebody's attic for a number of years and then came out again, and we have it, but we don't really know what kind of racing we're supposed to do for it. But that's another oldie. Here's a close up of that one. It was last raced for about 75 years ago. So one of the competitions we have here is called the Northwest Ice Yacht Association, which is an association made in 1913 of the various ice yacht clubs in the Midwest. And that year they had the racing up in Menominee, Michigan on the Bay of Green Bay. And here is a picture of the start of the race for that particular day or weekend, and it was kind of blustery looking day and a little bit of snow on the ice. It looks like a lot of fun actually.
It really
They're all
does.
gaff riggers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we still do that. In fact, the Jack Frost photo that I showed you was they came here to Wisconsin to Lake Winnebago in 2013 because that was the 100th anniversary of that regatta. We haven't held it every year for various reasons. We might skip a year's due to lack of ice thickness or too much snow, or for whatever reason we can't get the regatta in. And that happens quite frequently. Here is a picture of renegades lined up for one of the Northwest Ice Yacht Association's races, and I think we have about 20 renegades lined up with all the one designs. So that's kind of neat to see. It's fun. So when they race, they start half of the fleet starts off on starboard tack and half of the fleet starts off on port tack. And then after that, everybody gets the same course. Upwind, downwind is generally the case in 3 or 4 laps. And we have the International Skeeter Association. The first racing for that occurred in 1940, and this is a B skeeter, and then a rumble seater here, a skeeter, and some of the other bubble boats that are down here, the A skeeters. So they're lining up for a race. I don't know what year that was, probably about 20 years ago. It looks like it was on Oshkosh or Menominee. But they still race. They have the Skeeters, ABC Skeeters, and the Knights and the Renegades race in the International Skeeter Association. And then the DNs, then, as I mentioned, they're all over the world. Very popular boats, and the countries up here, you can read them, are where the regattas are held, and there's probably even a few others. And I liken them when they're racing, when there's a bunch of them racing around, they look like lake flies, the lake flies we have on Lake Winnebago, because there's all these little boats zipping all over the place. little white sails, you might have 50 or 70 boats sailing. That's a lot of boats to keep track of, and
It
and
must be chaotic. I
it
can't.
looks like it. Of course, everybody knows, how you're going around the course, and there's rules that we're following um, to help avoid collisions. But yeah, there's just a lot of activity going on. Okay, so finding a place to hold a regatta, what we need is about a square mile of decent ice that we can count on the whole area, and that ice needs to have enough thickness. And depending on what boats you're running, maybe you've got some smaller boats like the DNs. They'll run on 4 inches of ice because they can carry their boats out onto the ice, and the boat weighs about I don't know 150 pounds or something like that, plus the weight of the skipper. You have to have enough smoothness for the kind of boat that you're sailing. Generally the bigger boats can handle a little bit more roughness than the smaller ones. And then you have to have wind, and not too much wind. And we also want it to be above 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So you put all those things together, it can be a very fickle sport, because you might end up with ice like in the picture shown here, which when I took this picture, I should have had somebody standing there. These chunks are standing 4 or 5 feet tall. I don't think you could walk through that or crawl through that. But later that season, I sailed a boat through here at lickety-split speeds, and that ice was all melted down, and it was smooth and flat. So
I think you told me you had a wind come through with some warm air behind it, and it
it
just
melts.
right
Yeah,
down.
the warm air melts all these slabs down because they're sticking up in the air, and the colder ice is on the lake ice is the bottom sheet, and that stays cold. So it melts down and smooths right out. It was really, really surprising that it did that. Oh, here we have another commercial bird.
It's a 127-mile overnight race from Annapolis, Maryland to Norfolk, Virginia. It's a celebration of a race to market from an age that has passed into history, a time when the Chesapeake Bay hosted passenger steamers and was peppered with working boats and pleasure craft, all under sail. This is an invitation to take part in a celebration, an invitation to get out on the bay, strut your stuff, spend time with friends, and put some wind in the sails of your beautiful boat. This is an invitation to join the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race. After more than 35 years, the Schooner Race has decided to add an invitational class for non-schooner boats that would like to join us in the fun. Now, whether you have a schooner or classic vessel that harkens back to that age of sail, we're inviting you to join us. This race runs the length of the bay, and participants encounter all sorts of different conditions. It's challenging, and it's a great deal of fun. From the parade of sail in Baltimore's Inner Harbor to the crack of the starting cannon off Annapolis to the early morning finish at Thimble Shoal Light at the mouth of Hampton Roads, this is a race designed to celebrate your rig, whether classic yawl, ketch, sloop, workboat, or schooner. It's a chance to test your skills and enjoy the camaraderie of new friends and old. It's a chance to be part of something big and something meaningful. As an invitational class, the criteria are simple. If you have a vessel, modern or not, which is reminiscent of the age of schooners, you are welcome to join us. In addition, if you or your organization have a mission compatible with ours, promoting awareness of the Chesapeake Bay's heritage and ecology, and or preserving these historic vessels, you'd be welcome to join us too. Applications will be considered by our race committee, and if they feel that your boat or organization would fit our parameters, you're in for a wonderful experience. Join us. Let's get your boat on the line. Or if you know of anyone else who might fit our criteria, send this over to them. Let's keep this great event alive, and let's give back to those who live along our shores. Join us for the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race. It's a ride to remember. To find out more about the race and our mission of supporting not-for-profit organizations on and around the bay, please visit us at gcbsr.org.
Life is good, yeah. Life is good, yeah. Yeah, in my darkest times, you got me feeling like I've been walking on air. Left all my worries and cares. I've got no burdens around you. I don't care who knows I love you. 'Cause I've been so lost without you. And in my darkest times, you got me feeling like
Okay, in cruising, most of the guys that go cruising that are not racing, we'll call those the cruisers, the day sailors, they usually stay in the general area, like the bay here in Oshkosh, or within a square mile or maybe 2 square miles, that general area. They're the smart guys. I'm not so smart. I like to give rides. Giving rides is a lot of fun. I like to be able to scare more than just myself. So I take other people along to do that. And I've given lots of kids rides in my boat, the Wisconsin. I'll show you in a moment. It's got a forward trampoline cockpit that I can put 2 or 3 smaller kids in, and I have small helmets that I put the helmets on the kids, and the parents plop them in there, and off we go. Give them a ride around the bay. And that's also a way to get other people into the sport. There's a number of people that are sailing today uh, and own their own boats and go to the races. Perhaps they do that because I started out giving them a ride. They stopped and thought it looked like a cool thing, and I stopped the boat and I said, "Hey, you want to ride?" And they jumped in, and there they are. They're sailing in their own ice boat now. Kind of like how I got into the boats. I get thrown in a boat and off you go and say, "Hey, this is a lot of fun."
It is a
Uh,
great story.
yeah. So I like to help other people get into the sport that way and help them find a boat. Maybe there's a number of free boats the last bunch of years that have been going around. Help them learn how to sail. And then ice is hard. The first quarter inch or so it gives, and then it's really hard after that. So it's easy to break things on boats. Um, and so you need to repair the boats, and especially if you get an older boat, it probably needs repair in the first place before you even get it out on the ice. So I help the new people learn that sort of thing. Um, and that's what's a lot of fun to me. Now this thing locked up. There we go. Okay, this is one of the boats that I cruise in. Is a Class D. It's called Rosemary 4. This one weighs 1,400 pounds. She's heavy for that size boat. It was built in 1965, 32 feet long, 22 wide, and 32 feet tall. Um, and it's a two-seater, but the guy in the back, sometimes on a windy day, I like to have the guy in the back just riding back there because it helps put more weight on the steering runner to help keep that contact with the ice, because that's kind of important. But otherwise, I do all the steering and sheeting from the forward cockpit. Yeah, and the other boat that I do the most cruising with is the Wisconsin. It's about 100 years old. Nobody knows exactly how old it is. It's a Class C boat. It still has cotton sails. It needs new sails. It's 26 feet long and 16 wide, weighs about 600 pounds. And here you can see there's a thwart across here. And this forward cockpit area is where you plop in the kids or riders. I can put 2 adults can sit up here. They have to have their knees bent a little bit, but it's pretty comfortable to sail there. We've done lots of miles with 2 or 3 people in here. One other item also to note here is this long pole here on the side. It's about 10 feet long, and I've got a spike at one end, which rarely gets used, but at the other end, the forward end here is a wide blade, a chisel blade, about 4 inches wide or so. And I use that for when we get to ice shoves or pressure ridges, but we call them shoves around here. I use that to feel the other side rather than walking across the broken up ice. and the chunks, and you don't know whether they're really frozen tight or just look like they're frozen tight. Rather than stepping on that precariously and maybe going in the drink, I just use the pole to poke around, poke holes at it, chop at it, and poke on the other sides. Sometimes one layer of ice shoves underneath the other slab of ice, and you get water on top of the lower layer, but you don't know how thick it is because the water might be around. This lake is kind of dirty water. It's got a lot of silt floating in it, so you can't always see the ice very well. And I can feel around with that pole. So here's our lake again with the ice on it. Same picture you saw earlier. But I circled, in the circles are, the dark spots are open water. And there's rivers here. This is the outlet for the lake. This is one of the inlets for the lake. There's another inlet down here and a sewage discharge plant. And that's always got an open spot. There's some islands here. And all the other arrows are some of the pressure ridges or shoves that we have here. There's generally a shove running this way about here. There's one here. There's one here. And then there's some along the shorelines that run along here and run down the west shoreline down this way. They generally are in the same area, more or less, each year, but they're always different. And sometimes they're a full length, like this crack here might be one continuous crack all the way across the lake. Or some years it might be a partial crack this far and another crack from the other side that overlap, and they almost come together at the middle, but they might have a passage between the two. And you got to go find those to go sailing, cruising. And it's fun to find those passages because then you can get around that part of the lake without having to uh, go over the shove. Here is this particular year, the early in the season, the ice was about 4 inches thick, and we had a strong northeast wind, and it shoved about 4 miles of ice south. Some of it piled up on the shorelines here. You can see, well, I parked the boat, but it still has wind in the sails, but it's not going anywhere because of the snow. And that same day, we went further. We sailed from Oshkosh to Fond du Lac and back, and there are some piles of ice about look like a huge dump truck dumped them in the middle of the lake. They're about 30 feet tall. And I climbed up on top of it and we took a picture sitting. I should have taken a picture of the ice pile itself.
It's a
Well, here's
great
a good
shot.
day. We sailed, a friend and I got in the Wisconsin, and we sailed, it was a southwest wind, I think, that day, looking at the tracks here. We had to sail upwind, lots of tacking, all the way back and forth here. There's some shoves we had to cross along in here. Sailed over to here, met a friend, and then we sailed back and forth with the friends for a little bit, and then decided to head north. Must have got to a shove here, and we were looking for a place to cross it. And then keep on going north. We ran into some really rough ice, and it was getting to be late in the afternoon, and generally around sundown, the wind shuts down, and we didn't want to be way up the lake, stuck walking home. So we turned around and came back, and by the time we did that, we had sailed 91 miles that day and crossed probably 4 or 5 shoves. I don't recall exactly. And it had a good time. And that's a lot of fun exploring like that because every year the lake is different and it can be different from weekend to weekend. And you don't want to take a really fast boat to do this because things can come up on you a little bit too quickly that way. And you want to have good visibility so the really low boats aren't good for cruising. Yeah, some people call these shoves heaves. They're really technically pressure ridges because the two slabs of ice expand and they push against each other, creating the pressure, and then one of them fractures and one of them climbs on top of the other slab. So here's a picture of a Johnson A boat going over a shove. This one's uh, really a pretty easy one to cross because it's not sticking up very high. It was easy to find a place to cross, although further underneath the boom here, you can see this really wet spot there. Probably don't want to cross there. Plus the ice is sticking up higher, which doesn't mean you can't go through it. If you got enough, if you're going 10 or 15 miles an hour, you can crash through that ice and break it off. But it typically hurts the varnish on the plank. this particular day we sailed from Oshkosh down to Fond du Lac, and that was about 16 miles. There's one or two shoves across there. There's generally one in this area here around that island. Um, and then we picked up, there were three boats that day. It was late in the season. We picked up a fourth boat. In fact, the one you just saw, we picked up and we headed north up the lake and crossed another shove again. And years ago, there used to be a race called the Army Navy race. They sailed from Oshkosh over to Stockbridge. And at Stockbridge, there is a steep hill about, I don't know, 100, 200 feet tall. And at the top of the hill was a tavern. So the winner of the race was the first guy to order a drink, the first skipper to order the drink. So
Nice.
you sail over there, and if you're in close competition with other boats and there's a bunch of snow near the shoreline, you just run the boat into the snowbank until it stops and then pile out and just leave the boat right there, wind in the sails and everything, because it's stuck. It's not going to go anywhere. And then you have to run up the hill, which might have snow on it or ice, whatnot. And you have to play king of the hill, send your crew after the other guy's skipper to keep him from getting up, and likewise they do the same to you. So the stories we've heard from the old timers, it sounded like a fun race, but it hasn't been held in my lifetime. I've never sailed on it.
It sounds like a
So
blast.
we're sailing up here, and three of us are out standing out in the lake further, and the A boat is way in by shore. And then I see him park the boat, and they get out and they started walking up the hill. And then I realized where we were, and I thought, oh, we just lost the Army Navy race. Then we went up and had a drink or two, soda, of course. And then we don't have the track for this one, but it was something like this. We sailed north a while, and then the wind shut off entirely, and two of the boats sailed and walked back this way and got back in the early evening, and the other two boats stayed there. They were the smart ones. Um, and that day we only sailed about 50 miles, but we had a good day of it with the four boats really. But you can see, we might not cross our tracks at all on these excursions like this. And that's a lot of fun. So here's a picture of, I wouldn't call this a large shove or heave. And there's certainly a low spot right here where obviously that's where I'm going to pick the cross. But you see the tracks here. I already used my long pole to poke around here to make sure that it's not slush and that it's hard enough ice that I can sail over. So this is what it looks like. We can play that again.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So when you're doing the Army Navy race for real, the guys they do a circle. They wouldn't stop the boats, and they're generally bigger boats. They wouldn't stop them, from what I'm told. And they'd just make a circle and look at a spot and say, "Well, it looks like it's okay." Cross their fingers and over they go. So when you're doing this kind of thing, there can often be a pucker factor going on.
I can believe it. How
So,
fast are you going when you cross a ridge like that?
oh, 10 or 15.
Yeah.
Not too fast. Sometimes the runner grabs and catches and and the boat stops suddenly, so you don't want to be going too fast. You'll rack the boat and maybe have to repair it. But you can see how the planks can get beat up on the leading edge, knocking the ice off.
Absolutely.
So okay, that's all. Let's go sailing. Anybody got questions?
Very nice. Now, Andy, we got a couple on the Q&A here. Let's take a moment to talk about those real quickly. My friend Bill Milet writes, is there weather or lee helm center of lateral resistance versus center of effort?
Uh, there is really the boats are set up to be um the center of effort's generally over the center of gravity of the boat.
Yeah, so
Um,
pretty well balanced.
yeah, they're pretty well balanced. This particular one handles really nice. It's a very predictable boat to sail for a stern steer.
Another one that comes
Rosemary is
up,
not.
yeah, another one comes up. Have
Some
you
boats
ever,
can.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Some boats have lee helm or weather helm, and part of it is due to the shape of the runner, the curve. The runners aren't flat on the bottom edge; they have some rocker in them, and some of it has to do with the rocker and where the tallest part of the rocker is relative to the steering post too.
Somebody asked, I'm going to mispronounce this. Have you ever sailed on Lake Hapatkong? Did I say that right?
Hoptakong, I think might be it. I think that's in Maine. No, I haven't. I've sailed in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
Yeah. And I got one here. The boats you showed appeared to be racers that carried 1 to 2 people. Are there any that carry 3, 4, or even more?
Well, in this Wisconsin boat here, I've had uh, 5 people in it. One guy was on a stretcher with a broken leg.
Oh, God.
Where's the boat here? Here in this one. And we should have had a red light at the top of the mast because we actually had the EMS guys with us. Um, somebody sailing a skeeter sailed into a split that was about a foot wide, caught the runner in it, broke the boat, broke his leg, and he
Oh,
was sitting out there half a mile offshore, and the EMS guys wanted to know how, they're all dressed in their Gumby suits ready to, because they heard somebody's in the crack. Well, no, he's sitting next to it. The crack is only a foot wide. Uh,
yeah.
so they wanted to know how they can get out there, and it's because they won't drive their ambulance on the ice
You give them a good
very
ride, I'm
easily. And
sure.
I said, well, hop on the boat, we'll take you out there. So we did. We sailed straight downwind to get out there, and then which wasn't that far, and then loaded the guy up on a stretcher and put him crosswise on the boat right behind the mast and sailed back upwind to get home. So yeah, I've taken 3, 4 people in this boat cruising, and most of the stern steers you can take 2 people in. They have 2 cockpits or 2 baskets. And then, like I said, some of the bow steers, the skeeters are wide enough to put 2 people in. Or you can always have somebody just ride on the plank.
Nice.
That's happened too.
Now, I got to tell you, Andy, this is a question that comes up in all sorts of sailing presentations. People love to hear about accidents. And I think it's probably Julie Covert who's writing, what's the worst injury that you've sustained while ice boating? You always have one.
Well, the worst one, it's about 20 years ago. I was crossing a little crack here in the bay, a little heave, and uh, I could go back and forth because it was a little jump one way, and then I could turn around and come back the other way, and another little jump about like 6 inches or 8 inches, something like that. And I was doing that a number of times, and then I caught the runner. I was over in the wrong spot just a little bit, and I watched the runner jam into the ice, and it stopped right there. And the next thing I knew, I got up off the ice on the other side and looked at the boat, and it was broken.
Oh,
One side right where the pole is here was broken, and it's the third time. Well, I broke it 3 times there, and I was laying in the ice in a lot of pain, and that really hurt. Yeah, I got slapped out like a hockey puck, and I was on crutches for a week or 2.
oh man. A question about racing. Is there a race committee boat at the start and finish line, or is it sort of, you know, everybody says, well, gentlemen's finish?
The start is a stationary start, though they used to do rolling starts. I don't know how that worked. I have an idea, but I think the stationary start's a much better idea. And like you saw, the renegades are all lined up right here, and half of them, the side closest to us, is running off on port tack, and the other side, the other half of the boats are going to go off on starboard tack. And then you have a timing and a flag system. Basically, the guy says ready, set, go, and you all start running and take off. And then the finish line is this start is at the just below the leeward mark, and then you sail upwind, downwind, and you finish going downwind generally. And the finish line is between the leeward mark and another flag man stationed either straight downwind of the mark for or off to the side at right angles to the wind.
Gotcha.
So then they sail through that line, and you can, if you don't have somebody running the race committee, then it's a gentleman's finish. Yeah, you
Yeah, got it.
take your own place. But
Well,
generally, we have somebody watching.
we've got another technical question here, and then we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. What's
Okay.
the farthest aft the apparent wind can get? I'm asking
Um,
a downwind sailing question.
yeah, yeah. Coast Guard captain asked that one earlier. As you sheet in and go faster and faster, the apparent wind keeps going forward. Even when you start turning to go downwind, you go downwind on a broad reach, and your apparent wind is still coming from maybe 90 degrees off the true wind, or even further downwind than that. Uh, and you'll be going fast. But you don't have to go that fast. If you leave the sail way out and then turn downwind, you'll be going downwind at wind speed, and the true wind, the apparent wind will be the true wind at your back. The apparent wind and true wind will be one in the same direction. Or you can go off on a broad reach with the sail way out, like in Wisconsin crossing that shove. I had the sail out a good distance. It wasn't in tight. And you can control your speed. You let the sail out, you go slower, and your apparent wind will then become more like the true wind, more of the same direction. So yeah, you can have the apparent wind abaft of the beam, but you won't be going very fast when you do that.
The last question we have here, my friend, is let's see, Jeff asks, my dad called the open basket on our Class E Skeeter a car. Have you ever heard this term before?
Oh, calling it a car? No,
Yeah,
no, but I suppose it could. Kind of like a train car.
hey, works for me.
Yeah.
Well, I can't let this one go. Looks like Joe asks, tell us about your broken hip incident. Or was that too long ago to remember?
Oh, yeah, that was about 3 months ago. Well, not quite 3 months ago. It was February 6th to be exact. Well, I was sailing Wisconsin. It's got a soft bottom, and I was sailing across a small crack. Literally, it was 2 inches wide, but it had some little pieces of ice sticking up out of it all along the crack, and it was near the parking area. So we had been going back and forth across this. Everybody had been crossing this without any trouble. And I didn't think much of this one particular piece sticking up, but it and my left butt cheek tried to occupy the same place in space at the same time, except that my butt cheek was going about 25 miles an hour, and that piece was stationary. So I ended up breaking part of my pelvis in the very bottom. Um, it's still healing, but that's not what I would call the worst incident. The worst one I think was 20 years ago when I was on crutches.
Crazy. Well, Andy, I gotta say, what a fun and interesting lecture you've given us. And gosh, I think that picture of 1913 was just amazing. Just amazing. You've really made an impression in the sport of ice boating, and I think everybody's really enjoyed this very much. At the end of this, we'll have these chats available to you so you can take a look. Everybody wants to say hi. And I would just want to thank you very much. You've done a great job. And there you go. Thanks a million.
Sure, thanks.
Let's take a
Thanks. If
moment
I
and we
could,
will close this out. This will be available. We've recorded this session, everyone. So we can play that back by going over to GCBSR, Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race.org, and you'll be able to see that probably in about 4 days or so. And I want to thank you all very much for joining us. And having said that, pretty much here we go.